The stars were burning. Admiral Han Te stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the colony world of New Busan die. Orange flames spread across the planet's surface like a disease. Millions of people lived there. Millions of people who had trusted the fleet to protect them. "Sir, we have lost contact with the surface," said a young officer. His voice was shaking. Han Te did not answer. He counted the enemy ships on his screen. 400 Keth warships hung in space like metal insects. His fleet had 60 ships. The math was simple. The math was death. "Send the retreat order," he said quietly. All ships fall back to the secondary line. The bridge crew obeyed without question. They had learned not to question Han Te. He had led them through 3 wars in service of the Galactic Accord. He had never lost a battle. But this was not a battle. This was a slaughter. In the communications room below the bridge, Cha Nari pressed her hands against the console and prayed. She was not a religious woman, but she had nothing else left. The hologram in front of her showed the empty seats of the Galactic Council. 12 species, 12 allies, 12 friends who had promised to stand with humanity forever. "This is Ambassador Cha Nari of Earth," she said for the 100th time. "We are under attack. The Keth Empire has invaded our space without warning. We need immediate military support. Please respond. We need immediate military support. For 100th process. Static. Empty. Cold static." She had been sending this message for 6 hours. 6 hours while her people died. 6 hours while the Keth burned their way through human space like fire through dry grass. And the Accord said nothing. Nari remembered the day humanity joined the Accord. She was a child then, watching the ceremony on her father's old television. The Chancellor had smiled and called humans our newest brothers. He promised that no member of the Accord would ever stand alone. The galaxy had cheered. That was 30 years ago. In those 30 years, humanity had fought in 7 wars for the Accord. They had died by the millions, defending trade routes that brought them no profit. They had sacrificed their sons and daughters for species that could not even pronounce human names. And they had never asked for anything in return. Now they were asking. And the galaxy was silent. The hologram flickered. A face appeared. Nari's heart jumped. It was Ambassador Vela of the Orion Collective. Vela had been Nari's friend for 15 years. They had shared meals together. They had laughed together. Vela had held Nari's hand when her mother died. "Vela," Nari breathed. "Thank the stars." "I know." Vela's voice was flat. Her eyes would not meet Nari's. "The council has voted. 8 Major. Voted? What do you mean voted? We are dying out here." The vote was unanimous. The Accord will not intervene in the Keth-human conflict. Vela spoke like she was reading from a script. "We have issued a statement of concern and called for peaceful negotiations." Nari could not speak. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She felt like someone had reached into her chest and torn out her heart. "The Keth have promised to respect Accord borders," Vela continued. "They have offered favorable trade agreements. The Council believes that military intervention would destabilize the region and risk a wider war." "They are killing us!" Nari screamed. "They bombed Seoul this morning. 12 million people, Vela. Children. And you are talking about trade agreements?" Vela finally looked at her. There were tears in the alien's eyes. "I am sorry, Nari. I truly am. But I cannot help you. No one can help you." The vote was 11-0. She paused. "I abstained. It was all I could do." "You abstained." Nari laughed. It was an ugly sound. "My people are dying and you abstained. How noble of you." "Nari, please understand." "I understand perfectly." Nari's voice was now cold, colder than space. "I understand that we bled for you. We died for you. And when we needed you, you did nothing. You sat in your comfortable chairs and watched us burn. The political situation is complicated. The Keth are too powerful. If we fight them, we could lose everything. So you sacrifice us instead. Nari nodded slowly. You feed us to the wolves, so you can keep your peace. Your trade. Your comfortable lives. Vela was crying now. What would you have me do? Start a war that could kill billions? I would have you keep your promises. Nari reached for the console. But I see now that your promises mean nothing. None of your promises ever meant anything. Nari, wait. Goodbye, Vela. I hope your peace is worth our blood. She cut the transmission. The hologram died. Nari stood alone in the dark room, surrounded by the static of unanswered calls. She did not cry. She had no tears left. She had only a cold, hard thing growing in her chest. It felt like ice. It felt like hate. She walked to the bridge. Hante turned to look at her. He did not need to ask. He could see the answer in her eyes. They gave us nothing, she said. Remember that, Admiral. When this is over, whatever happens, remember that they gave us nothing. Hante looked back at the burning colony on his screen. His face was stone. I will remember, he said. We will all remember. Above them, the Keth fleet moved toward Earth. Behind them, the galaxy watched in silence. And somewhere in the void between stars, humanity began to change. They did not know it yet, but the people who would survive this war would not be the same people who started it. They would be something harder, something colder, something that the galaxy would learn to fear. The silence of their friends had planted a seed, and from that seed, something terrible would grow. Earth fell on a Tuesday. Commander Park Seok watched it happen from a bunker deep beneath the ruins of Incheon. The sky turned red, then orange, then white. The ground shook so hard that dust fell from the ceiling like snow. And then, there was silence. A terrible, empty silence. The Keth had glassed Seoul. They had glassed Tokyo. They had glassed New York, London, Beijing, and 100 other cities. In one day, they killed 2 billion people. They did not ask for surrender. They did not offer terms. They simply burned everything they could see. Sok crawled out of the bunker 3 days later. The world above was ash. Gray ash covered everything. The streets, the buildings, the bodies. He walked through what had once been his neighborhood. He found his apartment building. It was a skeleton of black metal and melted glass. He did not look for his family. He already knew. There were other survivors. They came out of basements and subway tunnels and underground shelters. They were burned and broken and empty-eyed. Seok gathered them together. He gave them food from his emergency supplies. He gave them water. He gave them something to do. People needed something to do, or they would lie down and die. We fight, he told them. We hide. We wait. And when the time comes, we make them pay. Far above Earth, Admiral Han Tae led the surviving fleet into the darkness. They ran to Neptune, to the cold and forgotten edges of the solar system. Only 42 ships remained. 42 ships carrying the last hope of humanity. Yoon Hana worked without sleep. She was the chief engineer, and she had a job to do. While others mourned, she tore apart broken ships and rebuilt them. While others wept, she studied captured Keth weapons and learned their secrets. She had no time for grief. Grief was a luxury for people who had a future. She found something interesting in the third week. A Keth fighter had crashed into one of their cargo ships. The pilot was dead, but the ship's computer was intact. Hana spent 4 days cracking its codes. What she found made her smile for the first time since Earth fell. Admiral, she said, standing in Hante's office. I know how to hurt them. Seeing the staying. Hante looked up from his maps. He had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Tell me. Their shields are weak against gamma radiation. Very weak. It is a design flaw in their power systems. If we can build weapons that produce concentrated gamma bursts, we can cut through their ships like paper. Can you build such weapons? Hana nodded. I can. But I need time. And I need resources. And I need you to keep us alive long enough to finish. How long? 2 years. Maybe 3. Hante was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and walked to his window. Outside, the stars were cold and distant. We will give you 3 years, he said. Whatever you need, you will have. Build me weapons that can break worlds. Hana. Build me something that will make them afraid. On Earth, the resistance grew. Siok trained farmers to be soldiers. He taught school teachers how to make bombs. He turned children into spies who could slip through Keth patrols unseen. They could not win a war, but they could make the enemy bleed. And every drop of Keth blood was a small victory. A young man named Quan Day came to Sok one night. He was barely 20 years old. His face was burned on one side, scarred by the fire that killed his mother and sisters. He did not speak much. He did not need to. His eyes said everything. I want to fly, Day said. I was training to be a pilot before the war. I want to go up there and hurt them. Siok studied him. The fleet is gone. They are hiding near Neptune. I cannot send you there. Then find me a ship. Any ship. I will fly it myself. There was something in the boy's voice that Siok recognized. It was the same cold fire that burned in his own chest. The same hate. The same hunger for revenge. There is a Keth patrol base 50 kilometers north, Siok said slowly. They have small fighters there. Fast ships. If someone were to steal one, they could reach the fleet in 3 days. Day smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. 3 weeks later, Day arrived at Neptune in a stolen Keth fighter. He brought with him something valuable, the complete navigation database from the base's computers, star maps, patrol routes, and the coordinates of Keth Prime, the enemy homeworld. Hante looked at the data and felt something stir in his chest. It was hope. A dark and terrible hope. He called a meeting of his commanders. They gathered in a frozen room on a station built into Neptune's moon. Their breath made clouds in the cold air. Their faces were hard and tired and angry. The galaxy has abandoned us, Hante said. The Accord watches while we die. They trade with our killers. They hold ceremonies and give speeches about peace, while the Keth burn our children alive. He paused. I am done asking for help. I am done begging. It is time to show them all what humanity can do when we have nothing left to lose. He pointed at the star map. In 2 years, we will take our fleet to Keth Prime. We will break their empire. And then we will teach the Accord a lesson they will never forget. Hana stepped forward. She activated a hologram. 3 massive devices appeared, cylinders of metal and light, beautiful and terrible. I call them suns, she said. When they are finished, they will be able to crack a planet open, kill everything on it, turn entire worlds into ash. The room was silent. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone else laughed a broken, desperate sound. Are you sure about this? Nari asked quietly. Once we use these weapons, there is no going back. We become something else. Something the galaxy will hate forever. Hante looked at her. His eyes were empty of everything except purpose. They already hate us. They proved that when they let us burn, now we will give them a reason for their hate. He turned back to the star map. In 2 years, the Keth will learn what it means to make an enemy of humanity, and the Accord will learn what it costs to betray their friends. Outside, in the black void of space, the survivors worked and trained and prepared. They had nothing left except each other and their rage. And that, they were learning, was more than enough. 2 years passed in the darkness between worlds. 2 years of work and pain and cold determination. The survivors of humanity did not rest. They could not rest. Rest was for people who had homes to return to, families to hold, futures to dream about. The survivors had none of these things. They had only the memory of everything they had lost, and the promise of what they would do about it. Admiral Han Te watched his fleet grow. At first, there were 42 ships. Broken, tired ships, held together by hope and wire. But Hana and her engineers worked miracles. They rebuilt destroyed vessels. They upgraded weapons. They took apart captured Keth fighters and learned every secret hidden in their metal bones. By the end of the first year, the fleet had 80 ships. By the end of the second year, it had 200. 200 warships crewed by people who had lost everything. 200 warships armed with weapons designed to kill worlds. It was not a fleet anymore. It was a fist made of metal and hate, ready to strike. Commander Park Suok brought soldiers from Earth. The resistance had found ways to slip past the Keth patrols, small ships, hidden routes, desperate courage. Every month, more survivors arrived at Neptune. They came from the ruins of cities and the ashes of villages. They came with nothing except the clothes on their backs and the fire in their eyes. Suok trained them all. Men and women, old and young. It did not matter. Everyone learned to fight. Everyone learned to kill. There were no civilians in humanity's fleet. There were only soldiers waiting for their chance. Quan Day had become one of the best pilots in the fleet. The burned boy who had stolen a Keth fighter was now a captain with his own squadron. He flew training missions every day, pushing himself and his pilots harder and harder. When someone asked him why he never rested, he gave the same answer every time. I rest when they are dead, all of them. Cha Nari had changed too. The diplomat who once believed in peace and understanding was gone. In her place stood a woman made of ice and calculation. She spent her days studying the Galactic Accord, their trade routes, their political relationships, their weaknesses. She knew more about the galaxy's power structures than anyone alive, and she planned to use that knowledge to tear it all apart. The Accord is not a true alliance, she told Han Te one evening. It is a web of fear and greed. Each species is terrified of being alone, so they stay together. But there is no real loyalty, no real trust. They abandoned us because it was easy. Because we were weak. And the Keth were strong. And how does that help us? Nari smiled. It was a cold smile, sharp as a blade. It means we do not need to conquer them. We just need to break their trust in each other. Show them that the Accord cannot protect them. Then they will fall apart on their own. In the third month of the second year, Hana finished the suns. The 3 weapons hung in space above Neptune, like metal gods. Each one was a kilometer long and filled with enough destructive power to end a world. Hana gathered the senior officers to watch the first test. They chose a dead moon, a lifeless rock, orbiting a gas giant at the edge of the solar system. No one would miss it. No one would notice its destruction. The sun activated with a low hum that Hana felt in her bones. A beam of pure white light shot across space and touched the moon's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the moon cracked. Great lines of fire spread across its surface like breaking ice. The rock split apart and exploded outward in a shower of burning fragments. Where a moon had been, there was only dust and ash. The officers were silent. Some of them were crying. Some of them were praying. All of them understood what they had just seen. It works, Hana said quietly. The gamma radiation tears apart molecular bonds. Nothing can survive it. Nothing can stop it. One sun can kill a planet. In minutes. Han Te stepped forward and placed his hand on the viewing window. The dust of the destroyed moon sparkled like stars in the void. How many planets can each sun destroy? As many as we want. They recharge using solar energy. In theory, they could work forever. Someone behind them spoke up. It was a young lieutenant with haunted eyes. Should we feel guilty for building something like this? Hana turned to look at him. Her face was calm. Her voice was steady. Guilt is for people who had a choice. We did not choose this war. We did not choose to be abandoned. We did not choose to watch our children burn while the galaxy did nothing. She looked back at the dust cloud in space. The Keth gave us no mercy. The Accord gave us no help. So we give them no guilt, only consequences. The final months passed quickly. The fleet trained together, moving as one unit, one mind, one purpose. Seox ground troops practiced assault tactics on asteroid bases. Day's pilots flew combat drills until they could fight in their sleep. Nari prepared her plans not just for the Keth, but for what came after. On the last night before the fleet departed, Day visited the memorial wall. It was a simple thing, a long corridor on the main station where names scrolled endlessly across the walls. Billions of names. Every human who had died since the war began. It took 3 days for the list to complete one cycle. Day stood there for an hour, watching names flow past like water. He found his mother's name, his sister's names, the names of his friends, his neighbors, his teachers, all dead, all gone. All because the galaxy had decided that human lives were not worth saving. Hana found him there. She stood beside him in silence, watching the names with him. After a long time, she spoke. I remember when this wall had only a few thousand names. Now it has billions, and still no one came to help us. Do you think they will understand? Day asked. After we do what we are about to do? Will they finally understand what they did to us? Hana shook her head. No, they will not understand. They will call us monsters. They will say we went too far. They will pretend that they are the victims. She paused. But they will remember. For 1,000 years, they will look at the stars and remember what happens when you abandon your friends. That is the only thing that matters now. Day reached out and touched the wall. The names felt cold under his fingers. Then, let us give them something to remember. The next morning, the final fleet activated its engines. 200 ships turned toward the distant stars, toward the heart of Keth space, toward the homeworld of the enemy that had burned everything humanity loved. Behind them, they left nothing except empty stations and cold memories. Ahead of them lay war and vengeance, and a message written in fire that the galaxy would never forget. The Keth detected the human fleet 3 days before it reached their homeworld. General Tovik of the Imperial Navy looked at the sensor readings and laughed. 200 human ships against 2,000 Keth warships. The humans had gone mad. They were flying to their deaths. They must know they cannot win, said one of his officers. Why would they come here? What do they hope to achieve? Tovik waved his hand dismissively. They are desperate animals backed into a corner. They want to die fighting instead of hiding. It is almost admirable. In a pathetic way, he turned to face his command staff. We will destroy them completely. Every ship, every survivor. Let this be the final chapter of humanity's sad little story. The Keth fleet formed a defensive line around their planet. 2,000 ships, their weapons charged and ready. Behind them, Keth Prime sparkled with the lights of 12 billion citizens. The heart of an empire that had conquered 100 worlds. Nothing could threaten it. Nothing could touch it. Admiral Han Te stood on the bridge of his flagship and studied the enemy formation. His officers watched him, waiting for orders. The tension in the air was thick enough to taste. They think we are here to fight a battle, he said quietly. They think we will follow the rules of war, offer surrender, accept their terms. He smiled. It was not a kind smile. They have forgotten what we are. They have forgotten what they made us. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. Every ship, every soldier, every survivor heard his voice. My friends, my family, we have traveled across the stars to reach this moment. Behind us lies Earth, broken, burned, abandoned by those who called us allies. Ahead of us lies the enemy who did this to us, and all around us, the galaxy watches, waiting to see what happens next. He paused. Today, we show them. Today, we write our answer across the sky in fire and blood. Today, we teach them all what it means to make enemies of humanity. The battle began at dawn, Keth Prime time. The human fleet did not advance in formation like normal warships. They scattered, each ship moving independently, weaving through space like angry wasps. The Keth fired their weapons and hit nothing but empty void. Then the human ships started to attack. Not with careful tactics and measured responses. With fury. With madness. With a complete disregard for their own survival. The first Keth battleship died when a human destroyer flew directly into its engine core. The human crew had ejected seconds before impact, not to save themselves, but to man the escape pod's built-in weapons and keep fighting. The destroyer punched through the battleship's hull like a fist through paper. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that swallowed 3 other Keth vessels. General Tovik stared at his screens in disbelief. They rammed us? They deliberately rammed us? Sir, we are detecting more collision courses. Dozens of them. The humans are using their ships as missiles. It was true. All across the battle line, human ships were accelerating toward Keth vessels. Some were damaged and unable to retreat. Some were perfectly functional. It did not matter. Every human pilot knew the truth. There was no going home. There was no future. There was only this moment, this battle, this chance to hurt the enemy, one final time. Quan Day led his squadron through the heart of the Keth formation. His fighters were small and fast, slipping between the massive warships like birds through a forest. He had lost half his pilots in the first hour. He did not mourn them. There was no time for grief. There was only the next target, the next kill, the next moment of survival. Captain, we are running low on ammunition, reported one of his wingmen. Then get closer, Day replied. Ram them if you have to. Make every death count. On the ground below, Commander Park Seok led the invasion force. Transport ships punched through the orbital defenses, while the Keth fleet was distracted. Thousands of human soldiers dropped onto Keth Prime's surface, their weapons firing before they even touched the ground. The Keth had never faced an enemy like this. Their past wars had been fought with tactics and strategy, with careful advances and negotiated retreats. The humans fought like wild animals. They used knives when they ran out of bullets. They used their bare hands when they ran out of knives. They did not surrender. They did not retreat. They did not stop. Sok led his unit through the streets of the Keth capital. Around him, the city burned. Buildings collapsed. Keth civilians ran screaming, while human soldiers advanced with cold efficiency. There was no mercy in their eyes. There was no hesitation. Every Keth face they saw was the face of the enemy that had killed their families. By the second day, the Keth defense line began to break. They had killed 60% of the human fleet, over 100 ships reduced to floating wreckage. But the remaining ships kept fighting, and the soldiers on the ground kept advancing. And the Keth began to understand something terrible. They could not win. Not because the humans were stronger, not because they had better weapons, but because the humans were not afraid to die. Every human ship was crewed by people who had already lost everything. Every human soldier fought like someone who had nothing left to live for. And against an enemy like that, superior numbers meant nothing. On the third day, Admiral Han Tae gave the order. Hana activated the first sun from her position on the flagship. The weapon powered up slowly, gathering energy from the distant star, focusing it into a beam of pure destruction. The Keth sensors detected it immediately. General Tovik screamed orders to his remaining ships. They had to stop that weapon. They had to destroy it before the beam fired. It crossed the space between the sun and Keth Prime in seconds. It touched the planet's atmosphere and began to burn. The sky turned white. The air itself caught fire. A wave of destruction spread across the planet's surface, consuming everything it touched. Cities vaporized. Oceans boiled. Mountains melted into rivers of liquid rock. 12 billion Keth citizens died in the time it takes to blink. General Tovik watched his homeworld burn. His screens showed him the death of everything he had ever known. His family, his home, his empire. He opened a communication channel to the human flagship. "Please," he begged. "Stop this. We surrender. We will give you anything. Please. Just stop." Nari answered him. Her voice was calm and cold. "Did you stop when our children screamed? Did you show mercy when our cities burned? We begged too, General. We begged the galaxy for help, and everyone was silent. This is genocide. You are monsters. We are what you made us." Nari cut the transmission. Hana activated the second Sunday. It fired at Keth Prime's industrial moon, where the Empire's weapons were manufactured. The moon cracked apart and scattered into space, its fragments joining the debris cloud that had once been a civilization. The remaining Keth ships fled. They ran in every direction, desperate to escape the burning hell that had swallowed their world. The human fleet did not chase them. There was no need. The Keth Empire was dead. Its homeworld was ash. Its people were gone. Han Te stood on his bridge and watched the destruction he had caused. His face showed no emotion, no triumph, no guilt, only a deep and endless weariness. "Admiral," said one of his officers, "we are receiving transmissions from the Galactic Accord. They are demanding an immediate explanation. They want to negotiate." Han Te smiled. It was a bitter smile. "Now they want to talk. Now that they have seen what we can do." He turned away from the burning planet. "Tell them we will meet them. We have something to say." The third sun waited in the cargo hold, unused. A warning. A promise. A reminder of what humanity had become, and the galaxy, watching from their safe and distant worlds, began to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. The humans they had abandoned were coming for them next. The Galactic Accord's capital world was called Haven. It was a beautiful planet of blue oceans and green forests, home to the Central Council that governed 12 species across 10,000 worlds. For 300 years, Haven had known nothing but peace. Its citizens slept soundly, protected by treaties and alliances, and the comfortable belief that civilized beings did not make war on each other. Now the human fleet hung in orbit above Haven, and no one was sleeping. Ambassador Vela walked through the corridors of the council building with shaking legs. Around her, diplomats and officials rushed back and forth, their faces pale with fear. The screens on every wall showed the same images: Keth Prime burning, the Keth fleet scattered and broken, human warships moving through space like sharks through water. In 1 week, humanity had destroyed the oldest empire in the galaxy. And now, they were here. High Chancellor Morek was waiting in the council chamber. He was an old being, his scales faded with age, his eyes heavy with the weight of centuries. He had led the Accord for 50 years. He had voted to abandon humanity. He had believed it was the safe choice, the smart choice, the only choice. Now he watched the human ships through his window and understood that he had been wrong. "They want to talk," he said to Vela. "They agreed to send a representative. I need you to meet with them." Vela closed her eyes. "Why me?" "Because you knew them. Because you had human friends. Because if anyone can make them listen to reason, it is you." She wanted to refuse. She wanted to run and hide and pretend that none of this was happening. But she was a diplomat. This was her job. And somewhere deep inside, she owed the humans this much at least. The shuttle that landed in the council's docking bay was small and gray and covered in battle scars. Cha Nari stepped out alone. She wore no armor, carried no weapons. She did not need them. The message was clear: a single human woman was not afraid to walk into the heart of an alliance that had betrayed her people. Because now, the alliance was afraid of her. Vela met her at the door. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Two old friends, separated by betrayal and blood, and the ashes of a dead world. "Nari," Vela said. "Are you?" Nari's voice was flat. "I remember your last transmission. You could not even look at me. You abstained from the vote, and thought that made you innocent. I tried to help. I argued for intervention. But the council voted to let us die, and you sat there and let them." Nari walked past her, not looking back. "Take me to your chancellor. I have a message to deliver." The council chamber was full. Representatives from all 12 Accord species sat in their curved seats, arranged in a circle around the central platform. They watched Nari enter, like she was a bomb about to explode. In a way, she was. Chancellor Morek stood at the podium. He tried to smile. It looked like a grimace. "Ambassador Cha, on behalf of the Galactic Accord, I welcome you. We are here to discuss terms for a peaceful resolution to current tensions." Nari did not smile. She walked to the center of the platform and looked around at the faces of the beings who had abandoned her people. Politicians and diplomats and rulers of worlds. They had power over billions of lives. They had made one decision, years ago, and that decision had killed everything Nari loved. "I am not here to negotiate," she said. "I am here to deliver a message." Morek shifted uncomfortably. "Ambassador, please. We understand that humanity has suffered greatly. The Accord is prepared to offer significant reparations, trade advantages, technology transfers. We want to make things right." "Make things right?" Nari laughed. It was a hollow sound. "Chancellor, do you know how many humans died while you were making your speeches about peace? 3 billion. 3 billion people, children, grandparents, teachers, farmers burned alive while you talked about trade agreements with our killers." The situation was complicated. The situation was simple. Nari's voice was cold as space. "We asked for help. You said no. That is all that matters." 8p. Nari's voice was Nari's. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. Morek flinched. Guards moved forward. But Nari only pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above her head. It was a recording. The final broadcast from Earth before the communications network went down. Screaming voices. Crying children. Desperate pleas for help in a dozen languages. And underneath it all, the terrible silence of the Accord's empty channels. The council chamber was quiet. Some of the representatives looked away. Others closed their eyes. But Nari made them listen. She let the recording play for 5 full minutes before she shut it off. "That is what your peace sounds like," she said. "That is what your comfort cost." Morek spread his hands. "Ambassador, we made a terrible mistake. We know that now. But the Keth are defeated. The war is over. Surely we can move forward." "The war is not over." Nari smiled. It was a terrible smile. "The war will never be over. Not for us. We trusted you, and you fed us to wolves. We have learned our lesson. Now you will learn yours." She activated another hologram. This one showed the third sun, hanging in space above Haven like a metal god waiting to pass judgment. "This is what humanity has become," Nari said. "We can destroy your worlds. All of them. One by one. Until nothing is left but ash and silence. We could kill everyone in this room. Everyone on this planet. Everyone in your alliance." The chamber erupted in panic. Representatives shouted and screamed. Guards drew weapons. But Nari stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos, waiting. "Silence," Chancellor Morek roared. The room quieted. He turned to Nari with desperate eyes. "What do you want?" Name your price. We will give you anything. We want nothing from you. Nari shook her head. We do not want your money. We do not want your technology. We do not want your apologies, or your guilt, or your promises that you will never keep. Then what? We want you to remember. Nari pointed at the sun on the hologram. That weapon will not fire on Haven. Not today. Instead, it will destroy something else. Your central communication relay. The heart of your network. The thing that holds your alliance together. Morek went pale. If you destroy that, the accord will collapse. Species will lose contact with each other. Wars will break out. Billions could die. Perhaps. Nari nodded. Or perhaps you will learn to survive on your own, the way we had to. Perhaps you will learn what it feels like to be alone in the darkness, with no one coming to save you. She turned and walked toward the door. Then she stopped and looked back over her shoulder. The Accord abandoned us because it was easy. Because we were weak and you were strong. But you were never strong. You were just afraid. Afraid of the Keth, afraid of change, afraid of anything that might disturb your comfortable lives. Her eyes were hard as stone. Now you will learn what real fear feels like. And when you look at the stars and wonder why humanity turned their backs on you, remember this moment. Remember that you did it first. She left the chamber. Behind her, the council dissolved into chaos. 3 hours later, the third sun fired. The central relay station, a massive structure that had taken 2 centuries to build, vanished in a flash of white light. Across the galaxy, communication networks went dark. Ships lost contact with their homeworlds. Colonies found themselves alone. The Accord, held together by nothing but shared signals and mutual fear, began to crack apart. Admiral Hante watched from his bridge as the relay burned. Beside him, Hana and Sok and Day stood in silence. It is done, he said. We can go now. The human fleet turned away from Haven. They pointed their ships toward the dark space at the galaxy's edge, toward the unknown regions that no species had ever explored. They were not conquerors. They were not rulers. They were simply survivors who had nothing left to prove and nothing left to lose. Quan Day stood at the viewport of his ship and watched the galaxy grow smaller behind them. Hannah joined him, her reflection faint in the glass. Do you think they will understand? He asked. After everything we did? Hannah was quiet for a long time. No, she finally said. They will never understand. They will call us monsters. They will tell stories about the terrible humans who burned worlds and broke empires. They will teach their children to hate us. Then why did we do it? Because it was not about them. Hannah turned to face him. It was about us. About showing ourselves that we would not disappear quietly, that we would not let them forget what they did. She looked back at the stars. They will remember. For 1,000 years, they will look at the sky and think of us. They will remember what happens when you abandon your friends. And maybe, just maybe, they will be better for it. The fleet vanished into the darkness. Behind them, the galaxy burned with the consequences of its betrayal. Wars would come. Empires would fall. The old order would crumble, and something new would rise from the ashes. And somewhere in the cold void between stars, the last humans sailed on alone, changed, but unbroken. They had given the galaxy a message written in fire and blood. Now they would see what the universe would make of them next. The silence that had once condemned them had become their weapon, and the galaxy would never forget its sound.